As if he just saw a ghost. Ooh. Oh, it's beautiful though. Oh, he's getting grabby. Oh no. Ooh, okay. I mean, both reactions are understandable. They check out, Okarin seeing her standing right there. Yeah, it's got to be a bit of a mindfuck, more than a mindfuck. And then, of course, from Makise, yeah, from her perspective, this is like a sex pest, essentially, this deranged person who's taken an interest in her. But, I noticed that maybe twice, her reaction to the things that he had to say, yeah, she took a bit of an interest, or something about the things he's saying to her, as crazy as they seem. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Time travel paranoia. Okay, then. Sciencey magazine, right? Oh, she isn't, man. Have you now? I think that's interesting. Who set this up? He's about to blow. Yeah, he's... She'll take the challenge. She'll accept it. He had an objection for... Oh, he likes it. He likes it. The back and forth. Someone that can kind of challenge him, call him on his shit. Defeated. She does appear to be hot stuff, right? The organization. I mean, I love that laugh. Ayushi. Oh. Ruka. Hey! From the phone. Congaree. Interesting. She's playing along. I mean, she's into him, of course. I mean, there's a lot of role playing. Ruka. But he's a dude. He's a dude. Ooh. Yeah. Oh, look at this. Oh, that quick flash. I saw that in the first episode as well. In the opening scene. You're the only one, man. Yeah. Makise kurisu. Look at that, a lot of new faces.
あれ、流行りの挨拶って聞いたんだけど。
名前は
Amane Suzuha。
年は
Amane Suzaha.
志望動機は
ブラウン管が好きだから。
Good enough.
これはコントか仕込みか岡部ではないフォー
せ家賃倍にすんだ
岡部倫太郎
よろしく。ねえ、その袋は何？コーンって小さいつぶつぶの？
Now hold on.
元はこんななんだ。
知らんのか
見ても。
おっと
本気にすんなこいつの創作だよ
Could this be our person from the roof?
せいぜいそう思い込むがいい
Who doesn't seem to
へえ、ああいうのが流行ってる。
trendy these days. Yeah, she's 18. And again, corn is something new to her. Ah, the roof.
12時頃落下
Yeah, is it possible that that was her in there?
間違いない
Similar hairstyle. Goodle. YouTube.
会見は中止牧瀬クリス事件
Okay, now, yeah. He's got to come to terms with it.
ジョン・タイタン
Oh,
タイムマシンは
CERN!
で独占されています。
But S instead of C?
人も企業も手に入れることはできません。
Whoa.
彼らは自身の利益のためだけに用いて世界にディストピアをもたらし
The organization, if you will.
私は未来を変えるためにやってきました。セルンによって作られたディストピアを破壊し、再び自由を手にするためです。
From 2036.
セルンイコール独裁者って言いたいのか
いわゆる祖父のパラドックスですね。それは存在しません。過去の自分に会うことも可能です。その場合、世界線が移動します。
Whoa.
まず時間は過去から未来へと流れる一本の線ではありません。世界線という無数に平行に流れる川のようなもので
Okay,
構成
yep,
されていま
it
す。
checks out.
例えば、あなたが今日通り魔に殺されるとします。それを未来から来た私が防いだとすれば、
Mm.
あなたが殺された世界と生き延びた世界の2つに
But both of those exist,
する
though.
というわけです。
今度のタイターは日本人
Whoa, okay, it's more than just a
3
nod.
年頃アメリカのネット上に現れた自称タイムトラベラー2036年から
2036.
救うためにタイムトラベルしてきたという
Looking forward.
当時はネットで大騒ぎになり関連書もいくつか出て
Interesting.
しかし今ジョン・タイタンを語るバカがいるとはな誰のやつタイタンを
Oh, hold on. Could be something else at play here.
12件バカな10年経ったとはいえあれだけ騒ぎになったんだぞ
He is in a different timeline, so maybe this is.
ない
Oh, okay, it is.
関連書はここに集めていたはずくさ
Wow. Okay, now I'm beginning to see some of these changes. Hey, Ferris.
本はどうした
Saw that in the phone?
ジョン・タイターに関する本だなんだ
Okay. It's gotta be madness to have your memories from that timeline continuing in.
10年前つまり2000年のことだ
面白いことを言う人ですね。しかし、
So instead, this is
言ったことはありません。
how I play it out in this timeline, or is playing out in this timeline. Clicking noises? Oh, another new face.
おい今俺を取ったなすぐ削除した方が身のためだ
Could this be maybe the person from the rooftop? I mean, the hair is quite a bit longer, but the top part,
不快な思いをさせたのなら
I think she did take a photo of him
取っていたのは
specifically.
証明
ま
自分が今日
Oh, a record.
歩いて何を見たか
I've seen two people that could be time travelers already in this episode.
これ
That's a computer.
随分古いパソコンだ
IBM 5100.
あいや
詳しい人は
あるいは
Ooh.
その人誰
Interesting song selection.
写真は削除するように断る
She did take a photo of him.
貴様
So she knows who that is.
教えてくれたら消す
いいだろ
Whoa.
うただし仲間を売るわけにはいかん
Yeah.
教えるのは俺のメアドだ 法王隠居魔と書いてあるだろう。お風。
Whoa.
カラメールを送れ。こっちから送り返す。
Wow. Okay.
おかえりなさいませご主人様。
Hey, it's a maid cafe. Ah, they mentioned it in the first
お
episode.
かえりなさいませ。おかり
Oi.
マユリ、
バイト中は眉毛
That's work.
なんだよ。
すまない。期間の妨害がひどく。
You might be.
そこまで期間は迫ってるんや。勝手にや。そんでフェイリスも混ぜてほしいね。
Hey,
よせ。
she said Ferris.
できるほど期間は甘くない。
Is that her?
おうこれ IBN
IBN instead of IBM. Okay.
幻のレトロ PC
さっきの女か。
His phone goes off all the time. Ooh, I got a name?
二十歳フリーター、嫌だって言ってもしちゃいま。これが
Yeah, that sounds like someone else entirely.
どうしたん
The tone.
これ
Mayushi's.
眉しのじゃ
安心しろ。マユリから提供された研究費で。
She wrote her name on it, bro.
だからそれを眉しのって言
さ
う
あ、双子と放り込んで変化を確かめるのだ。
一本でいいだろ上皇
Hey, 12. 120. I'm guessing seconds. Unless it is meant to be 12 seconds. And that was real time.
お
どうした？
消えてるバナナ
Whoa, whoa.
バカだ。
隠したのはオカリンだろ
そうか、わかったぞ。これはもしやテレポート可能なって。
It might just be, man.
なんだって
ではどう説明する？房からちぎ、レンジに入れたはずのバナナを。
お
Whoa.
消える
So did it send it back in time to the point
さ房に完全に繋がって
completely
ね
attached?
確かにさっき一本ちぎったよな。
多分
興味深い実験してるんですね。岡部倫太郎。いえ、法王院京馬さんでしたっけ。
マキセ。クリス。
2 episodes in a row. Makise Kurisu. Cliffhanger. Okay, so Steins Gate episode 2. And look at that, 2 episodes running, you've got Makise getting the big sign-off moment, right? This time she shows up at the lab to both, Daru and Okarin's surprise. I mean, it's a surprising moment for me as well, but, ultimately her actually taking an interest isn't the biggest surprise. The surprise is her just kind of, being there, suddenly, right after, Daru and Okarin actually experienced something really quite fascinating, right? I mean, it's fascinating for me as well. I mean, at first, both of them just think that the other is playing a joke on them, right? But no. Something significant is at play, right? And this little rented apartment or room above, the CRT shop, Mr. Brown's CRT shop, some really incredible and life-altering and I don't know, history-altering things are taking place there, or the beginnings of it are right there, or the room that's been turned into a lab, Okarin's apartment, and all of that, right? So yeah, this actually kind of reminds me of another talking point I have about this, the pacing of it and the focus of this episode specifically as well, even though episode 1 had many of the similar elements. And I'm speaking of, the slice of life elements, the bonds, the lived in aspect of it, and how authentic it feels to me, at least. And just, I don't know, the joy of experiencing that, the day to day and all of that, I'll get to it in a bit. But yeah, Makise showed up and, she knows they're doing some interesting experiments already, unless, she's been standing in that corner and she actually saw that happen. I don't know. I think she kind of just, yeah, actually, I'm not even sure. I'm not sure how exactly she knows that they are doing interesting experiments, because again, this is not meant to be the same Makise I saw in episode 1, the one who dies apparently, right? stabs and bleeds out, or stabbed rather and bleeds out. This is meant to be the one that survives in this divergent timeline. At least I think so. See, that the thing is, the title is so perfect, isn't it? Because it's not just time travel paranoia or paranoia for characters like Okarin. It's also for me as an audience member. Is it possible that this could be a Maxe that's time traveling? It's possible. Anything's possible at this point. Like I said, I saw two characters that easily could be time travelers, right? I mean, there's all kinds of new faces in this one, and essentially I did have names for maybe a couple of them in the last episode. Really quickly, as Okarin is scrolling through his outbox in the conclusion of episode 1, and I'll get to that again. I'll be getting to a lot of things from episode 1 again after getting some more information here in episode 2. Specifically, a message from Mayuri, right? Don't use it for funds. And the subject line said, Oppa, right? Uppa or Oppa. There's a lot of different personalities, really unique personalities kind of running off this ensemble cast. Though, sure, there might still be more characters. But yeah, at this point, it feels like a pretty large ensemble cast already. And at the center of it is Okarin. And, that could be at play for so many different things in this narrative. Yeah, I find myself really enjoying all of these characters, right? Even if it's limited appearance characters so far. The run-in with Raku, right? That's a fantastic scene. That right there is just a perfect segment to showcase the bonds, the day-to-day, the slice of life elements of this anime. It's Daru who said that it would have been better if the lecture itself, the one for credits, that is, if it would have been better if it's at the Maid Cafe. And then of course I see that Maid Cafe in this episode, and he said Ferris-tan, right? So I got that name there. In Okarin's phone, I saw names like Raku, and again, Ferris shows up in Okarin's phone as well as he's looking at the outbox. I'll actually come back to a lot of things from episode 1, because again, now that I've seen episode 2, yeah, it makes a lot of these things even more interesting, or it gives them a bit more context. And it simply is that kind of story that you can just keep going back to the prior episode and kind of have a different understanding, or more of an understanding for some of the things that you saw. But yeah, going back to the new faces, there's also some that are new to Okarin as well, right? Some of them are friends that are just friends, but I got to see them for the first time. And of course, Okarin and Mayuri and Daru interacting with them. But then there's new faces. Really interesting new faces, or characters rather. And of course, just looking at the timing of it all, the arrival of these two characters, yeah, there's a lot to dig into here, But even those two characters, you have people like the glasses lady. That's the one name I'm not really sure of just yet. I don't really have a grasp on it, so I'll say that for now. But the other one is simple enough. Amane Suzaha. Polar opposites, right? As far as personality is concerned. One is an introvert, one is an extrovert, and one essentially almost turns into a completely different person, or feels much more, comfortable or at ease and herself if it's communication through emails or these messages, right? Now listen, that's just me assuming that might be the same lady. Lady? I mean, I doubt she's a lady. Lady as in, someone that's maybe much older. I'm guessing she's perhaps around Okarin's age, or maybe a little bit older than Okarin, but certainly not as young as, Ferris or Mayuri, or Raku even. It's possible that once she has that information, she has the contact info, and you simply cannot rule out the possibility that was the idea there the whole time, getting some kind of contact information from Okarin specifically, right? Paranoia, time travel paranoia, conspiracy theories, possibilities, speculation, that is going to be at play here. But, if indeed that does end up being her who is actually messaging, yeah, you see that she's able to be herself, I suppose. Maybe that is her true self. But, in person, she's got quite a bit of anxiety. I mean, that phone, just the possibility of that being snatched for even a few moments, right? It gives her almost like a panic attack, right? She's really, really afraid in that moment. Just at the possibility of not being in possession of her phone. So it feels like it's her life. And if that's not on her person, it's going to be really difficult. Things are going to become really difficult. And then, you go a little bit further beyond just the, anxiety aspect of it, perhaps. There's a time traveler element of it at play as well, possibly, right? That, she's taking these photos and proof of record and all of that, because she also could be a time traveler. I mean, hell, I said there could be a possibility. I've already seen 2 characters that could be time travelers. There's even a possibility of a third, right? And of course, I'm speaking of the infamous John Titor, right? Who is fully established as a canon component of this narrative. This is meant to be a canon character, right? So it's much more than just a nod. I mean, John Titor is a full-on component of this storyline, of this story, of this anime, essentially. So yeah, there's also a possibility of a John Titor running around, sneaking around. But that's just assuming that no one else that I've already seen is not John Titor. Like I said, there's 2 characters here that easily could be time travelers. There's some telltale signs. One is out here looking for the IBN 5100. Of course, that's the same computer that the actual John Titor, again, it's all a hoax and everything, but, he's looking for an IBM 5100 as far as the details of his mission are concerned. So you've got a new character looking for the IBN 5100, and they have, Daru's contact information. They have Okarin's contact information. I mean, hell, she's even got Okarin's passcode, right? El Sai Kongaru. Raku called it Gongari. I thought that was kind of cute. I mean, the whole scene, getting to meet Raku, and just the whole scene is so wholesome, so cute. It's just a joy to see them kind of go about their day-to-day. Again, the slice of life element. I mean, for me, it's just one of the best parts of this anime already. 2 episodes in, right? And, there's a distinct feeling of that being, really quite deliberate, taking us through that, the really specific pacing of it all. Yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a bit, because again, I really appreciate it quite a bit already. But yeah, going back to Elsai Kongaru, and Okarin and all of that, and her having so much information already about Okarin and that kind of contact info. Yeah, it's interesting. It is, but the immediate feeling, it's a bit of concern on my end. Even now, I feel a little bit uneasy about that. Because I don't know enough about that character, especially now that you have characters like John Titor, right, expositing some really crucial information for us, right, establishing the structure of it all, right, the time travel elements at play, the mechanics at play, yeah, the many worlds interpretation is certainly at play. That much is clear by the end of the last episode as well. But yeah, him establishing CERN that begins with S rather than C, as this, again, organization essentially, right? This could be this elusive, shadowy organization that Okarin is kind of going on and on about, right? But again, this Okarin doesn't truly know about any of that, right? Until now. I mean, again, he has to take it with a pinch of salt, all this information that he's getting from John Titor on the message boards. And, notice how John Titor also shows up in this timeline, right? On those message boards around the same time as the lady with the glasses and Amane Suzaha, right? Who happens to find a part-time gig right below Okarin's apartment, right below the lab that has some really significant things already at play. And then, of course, there's a few other telltale signs that indeed Amane Suzaha could be a time traveler. And hell, more than just a time traveler, it could be a person I've seen already, because yeah, she kind of does resemble the body type, the body shape, and the hair as well, of the person I saw on the roof, right? Didn't see a face. or that person on the rooftop, they knew Okarin, right? They knew, I don't know, they knew a Okarin, perhaps not that Okarin at that moment in time, at least the one that I know from episode 1, the one that carries on or carries over into this new timeline, right? Like I said, that must be just madness. And to be honest, I think he's actually doing all right in terms of, kind of coping and handling this, right? He must feel like a crazy person that no one else remembers any of these things. So I thought, he'd be a little bit more paranoid about all of these things that no one seems to remember, but he has such a definitive memory of. But, going back to the possibility of Amane Suzaha being the person on the rooftop, I'd say out of the two, her and the glasses lady or the glasses girl, I'd say that out of the two, Amane Suzaha actually is the much more likely option, right? Again, given, the hairstyle and then the body shape, she's really rather, slender, and kind of tall, I guess. Not really that tall, but see, that's the thing. The person on the roof looked really kind of tall, right? Could be a perspective thing. And again, in terms of other telltale signs that this, really truly could be a time traveler, you see her reaction to things like corn, right? In its actual natural form, right? She's never seen it. And she's 18. And this is something really, really new to her. And then, of course, beyond that, just the things that she's saying here, oh, I thought it's trendy these days to, talk like this or to say hi, to say hello in this manner, right? Both Okarin and Mr. Brown are a little bit perplexed by her, I don't know, approach to saying hello. I thought she's great. I thought it made a great first impact, that character introduction. But yeah, it's made really quite clear that she's only seen the processed type of corn, perhaps the one you see in cans, right? So that idea of canned food, that gives you a really specific image in mind as well. Speaking of specific images, there's a lot of, again, imagery that again kind of feels like subliminal messaging, right? Quick flashes, quick cuts. One of those moments is rather, I don't know, it's the feeling I get from that whole scene, and I'll go into it in detail in a bit. And I'm speaking of, Mayuri handing off her bags to Okarin, right? It doesn't get any more clear than that. That's a significant moment, that exchange. And again, the quick flash to some kind of land, again, war-torn land, perhaps, right? Could be a glimpse into the future. And again, these are years that are straight from, John Teeter's, claims. 2036 is also mentioned here. I brought that up in episode 1, right? 2034, 2036. I'll be on the lookout for other details. And look at this. An episode later, I've got like a whole thing on John Teeter. And again, if it doesn't end up being just a completely new character, a third character, I suppose, it's entirely possible that I've already seen John Teeter, right? Could be Amane Suzaha, could be the girl with the glasses. And again, like I said, the girl with the glasses is straight up looking for the IBN 5100. So, based on that right there could be our John Teeter, right? And, this idea of her being really quite reserved in person, at least, I suppose, but being really quite chatty and open and just really being herself, I suppose. Again, assuming that is her messaging Okarin and not, that information being handed off to someone else. Yeah, you can see John Teeter in those message boards is rather open and confident. And you can kind of also gauge that in the approach of that scene as well. The voiceover that they're actually using. Of course, the voices that are being used there are just generic voices, right? I doubt that, that's actually John Teeter speaking, because they also kind of show me a photo, right? A full-on, just kind of like a stock photo, I suppose. At first, I thought maybe this is, Steins Gate's take on John Teeter, but then immediately you see, it continues to show me all kinds of faces, right? Kind of alluding to this idea of anyone could be John Teeter, right? And it multiplies until there's like 100 faces on the screen, right? And the thing to remember here is that Okarin actually used Hohen Kiyoma, his code name on that message board. So if indeed, the lady with the glasses ends up being John Teeter on the message board, she knows, She knows who Ocarine is now because she's had a real run-in with Ocarine. But again, you see that she took a specific photo of him as well. So is it a chance encounter? I don't know, man. I feel like that photo almost kind of confirms it as well. That it's a deliberate attempt to engage with Ocarine. And again, now that there is a setup of, CERN and, this dystopian future. So yeah, be it in film, in gaming, in anime, in television, in books, in anything. I do love a good dystopian future. So I'm really rather hopeful that I'll get to see that dystopian future as well. I'm pretty sure I'll get to see it. Listen, man, 24 episodes. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface, and I'm already so enthralled with just the characters and, just the slice of life elements of it. Listen, all of that good stuff, the time travel mechanics, yes, right up my alley. And, I'm going to have a lot of fun engaging with that. Of course I am. But, I've got to say at this point, 2 episodes in, I've really rather enjoyed the slice of life elements of this anime already. And to me, it's one of the most endearing parts of this anime, 2 episodes in. And I'm really hoping for much more of this pacing, this approach, the friendship dynamics, the group dynamics, the ensemble cast dynamics, right? Okarine's first circle characters, and again, Ocarine being the constant, really functions on a few different levels as well, given that it's a time travel narrative. And again, this idea of Ocarine being a constant, the unique aspect in this that I've seen right now is, this idea of that Ocarine from, that timeline, the one I see in the beginning of the anime. Though, listen, it's entirely possible that the rooftop scene and, Mayuri and Ocarine showing up at the radio building are totally different scenes. They don't have to be linear, because again, that Ocarine on the rooftop it feels like an Ocarine that's been through some shit, man, and then some, right? As he studies Mayuri's face. Mayuri and Ocarine, that's I'd say one of the most endearing and interesting relationships of this anime already. There's another one developing quite nicely, I'd say. Indeed, it appears they are going to be star-crossed lovers. You've got Maxe and Ocarine. The banter there, the dynamics there, the back and forth, it's just perfect, isn't it? Slowly, I know they'll fall for each other. It's just there. You can just see. All you really need to look at is how she challenges Ocarine at that lecture, and that close-up of his smile. He liked it. You could tell he liked it. She's really different from anyone else in his life, right? But that can apply to anyone else as well. Daru is different than anyone else. Ferris is different than anyone else. Mayuri is different than anyone else. That's a childhood friend, right? So that relationship, I'm really quite tapped into that. But the thing is, now that I do kind of have this ensemble cast established by the end of this episode, I think I'm seeing elements of harem anime, right? That genre. I don't have much experience, if any at all. Maybe I came across some elements of it and I don't really remember, or maybe I didn't even clock it. But yeah, here it feels like, okay, there's certainly elements of that at play. Again, you've got Ocarine and you've got all types of different personalities around him. Even later, he's name dropping characters that might have been, compromised or put in danger through association. He's name dropping, Simone and a few others. This is, in that scene with Amane Suzaha, right? And, immediately she's just open to anything. She's like, yeah, you can talk to me about this, So, that right there, that eagerness to kind of get close to Ocarine, to build that bridge, I suppose. Yeah, that's again a telltale sign for me, at least, that at the least there's a good chance that this is a time traveler. And then of course, a bit beyond that, this might be someone that actually knows Ocarine already, right? And then that kind of brings in the possibility of that idea I brought up in episode 1, that you're going to have characters that are in on it, or they know how things are, and maybe they know a person quite a bit, down the line or at some point in time. But now, as they stand here, they kind of have to keep some things to themselves, right? that could be one of the possibilities here, that Suzaha actually, knows Okarin quite well, but not this Okarin, not just yet. But yeah, you've got Ferris, you've got Raku, you've got the girl with the glasses, Mayuri. It's not really a romantic interest. I mean, I'm not saying all of them are romantic interests for him, because ultimately I think only one is meant to be more of a romantic angle, and I think that is going to be Makise, or Maxe rather. I mean, you've got so many of these characters that are, really fond of Okarin as well, many of them, or at least a couple of them, just play along in that role-playing aspect of it. Though, again, I think there's a bit more to it than just, goofing around and fun and games. That's certainly a part of it, but I feel like, once this kind of, plays out, once the story kind of ticks along, there'll be other reasons. And I think I have an idea of, why exactly Okarin takes this approach, right? The optics of it all, a mask, if you will. But yeah, my understanding of harem anime, or that genre, is that, okay, it's meant to be a protagonist, usually a male. I'm sure, it gets flipped as well in some anime. But yeah, usually a male, and there's many options, right? Romantic options, I believe. That's usually the case. But here, not all of these are meant to be romantic options, though they can be, I feel like... I know shipping is a thing, it's always a thing. I feel like, people probably do the whole shipping thing as well, Okarin and this character, or Okarin and that character. I mean, you've got characters like Raku, right, who's clearly interested in Okarin, right, really respects Okarin. I mean, it's clear that there's a crush at play. And, as that scene is concluding and they say goodbye to Raku, I almost said that, okay, Okarin, if that's, if that's how your heart feels, that's how it feels, right? You see that he's blushing a bit as well. And, the whole scene almost kind of had a poetic quality to it as well. I mean, it almost feels like a poem, doesn't it? His delivery of it all. And again, it is meant to be comedic as well. I'm laughing at the delivery of it. I thought the comedic timing there is just impeccable. Really funny stuff. Listen, honestly speaking, the humor in this is really quite fun for me already. I think I've said it on a few occasions before. I find the humor in a lot of anime that I've experienced, a lot of fun. But the thing is, it doesn't happen that often. It just only happens every now and then because, as you know, many of the anime that I end up checking out are usually rather serious, yet they have some moments of levity here and there. And I'm sure, I'm more than sure that this is going to get really serious. I've already seen it, a matter of life and death. Maxe being dead in that one timeline, but in the Divergent timeline, she's alive, she's here. I'm sure, the stakes are going to escalate quite a bit. Earth-shattering and mind-shattering levels and all of that. But, a lot of the humor and the actual timing of it, the delivery of it, it really works for me. Another, random moment. It's in the Amane Suzaha scene, and he's at this point, Mr. Brown's like, yeah, he's the idiot who rents the room above. And at that point, I think he said his actual name, Okabe, right? Maybe he said his last name, Rintaro. And you see that Okarin tries to say his code name, but right in the middle of it, Mr. Brown cuts him off. I'll double your rent. And you see immediately, he falls in line. I'm Okabe Rintaro. Right? He introduces himself properly. So, that kind of stuff. I find that kind of stuff funny. And listen, before going into it, I saw some comments about maybe, some of the things in this could be a little bit outdated. And, I'll be honest, there's certainly some references that are clearly being made here that I do not understand. And I think that's fine. It's fine. I don't have to get every single reference. There's a good possibility or chance that I cannot get those references. They might be from things I have no idea about. Right? Or no understanding of. So I'm sure, in the comments, you guys are going to explain these things so I can have a better understanding for some of these jokes. But it's fine. I don't feel like, oh, okay, no, this, I don't understand any of this stuff. So now, I'm feeling left out. No, that's not the case at all, because there's not that much of that there. But there's enough there that I think that people who do understand it, it must feel like a fun moment for you guys. There's a moment in the beginning, right, as Okarin is having his mind blown and he's seeing someone who could be a ghost standing in front of him in Maxe. And as he's trying to see, oh, is this real? How could this be real? And he's getting a little too hands-on at that moment. She shoves him back and she said something, and you see that Daru actually recognized it, and he said, "Oh, Luis Chan or something." I'm guessing it's some kind of character that he knows about as well. So yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting that, you know, even in that moment, Daru picked up on some kind of reference or something he's heard before clearly from a character. But Maxe also knows about that and used it in this context. But listen, you know, 2 episodes in, even if there's, you know, tropes at play and stereotypes at play, a lot of the banter and the back and forth and the, you know, the jokes and all of that, I actually find it charming. It's endearing, you know, and I think one of the main reasons for that as well is because, you know, it is the type of stuff I do want to experience in anime, and I just haven't had the chance, right? So, you know, for many of you, it might be a little bit overplayed. For me, it's rather new, right? Like I said, the type of anime I do end up checking out, it doesn't really usually have this type of banter in it, this type of humor. So, you know, it's new, it's fresh for me. So yeah, you know, I am open to these types of experiences in anime because I just haven't had them yet, right? Yeah, you know, I've seen a lot of good stuff, a lot of classic stuff, some of the all-timer stuff, essentially, right? But, you know, there's still quite a bit that I really want to get to, right? I feel like I'm still just scratching the surface. And I think another reason for that is the actual voice acting. You know, listen, you know, 2 episodes in, I cannot even imagine not experiencing these actors for these characters. You know, you look at someone like Mayuri. I'm sorry, but I just highly doubt that any other dub is able to channel that Mayuri. That is Mayuri. Nothing else is ever going to be Mayuri, right? And that's 2 episodes in, you know. That's how distinct it feels. And it's integral to just the character as a whole. You know, anytime Mayuri is on screen, I just light up. And again, you know, you've got quite the iconic voice for Okarin as well. Yes, I know, you know, the name of the voice actor. I just can't say it. Again, it's the same person who did Light Yagami, right? One of the redeeming qualities of Light Yagami, right? The actual voice acting of the character. But yeah, you know, if people had concerns about certain things being off-putting for me in this anime, yeah, I mean, I can see how you probably got to that point, you know, thinking that maybe, you know, some things might not be for me. You have to look at it from the perspective of, okay, you know, yes, I'm really quite an experienced consumer of storytelling, but I'm not that experienced in this type of anime. It's new to me, right? Or this element of anime. You know, I'm not speaking of, you know, the time travel mechanics of it, but, you know, that genre, that type of humor, that type of banter and back and forth. You know, it's new to me, so it's I don't know, I don't mind it. I mean, listen, of course, you know, it's only 2 episodes in. Maybe at some point I do end up kind of, you know, not liking some parts of it. But yeah, so far it's been enjoyable. It has. In that oppressive Japanese summer sun, right? Another constant. Something I've come to really kind of latch onto as well. You know, just the tone of it all, right? For me, you know, time to time, or from time to time, I get this feeling of, you know, just wanting to live within that tone, just being a part of it as long as possible. I'm getting that already here in Steins Gate, 2 episodes in. I just want to be a part of this. You know, I want to be a part of their friend group. There's just this excitement and urge to just be a part of this tone, this pacing for as long as possible. But again, you know, it's not going to last forever. And I think, you know, again, it'll be quite a deliberate switch up as well. And I think, you know, even within the context of the narrative, you know, these moments, you know, the good times, if you will, just the, you know, mundane, the day-to-day, the normal times, you know, the goofing around and all of that. These are the types of moments that a lot of these characters are going to miss, really, truly miss, once, you know, they get really tangled up in all of this. And I'm guessing there's going to be quite a switch up in the, you know, pacing and the stakes. And yeah, at that point, both us, the audience, and you know, the characters are going to really you know, reminisce about these times. So I'm going to savor it as much as I can, you know, taking every single episode, taking all of these moments, because I know, I just know, you know, knowing time travel mechanics and just the narrative, how, you know, things play out, usually, especially now that the stakes have been raised a bit more through John Teeter and his description of, you know, the dystopian future that CERN has created and kind of rules with an iron fist, you know, monopolized time travel specifically. right? So there's that aspect of it. So I think there's a really successful, deliberate attempt to establish just the tone at this moment in time, the good times, right? The ones that you should savor. Good times with friends, the bonds, all of that, right? Because, at some point down the line, um, you're going to miss the simple moments and the simple times you had with these people. Because, yeah, like I said, man, at some point I do expect things to escalate quite a bit, and that these characters are going to go through heartbreaking and emotional and, again, mind-blowing experiences because of the time travel aspect of it. And, the thing is, a lot of the stuff I really kind of latched onto here in the slice of life aspect of it, it's stuff that I've experienced quite a bit in Japanese film, right? Even in South Korean film as well. I mean, that's always been a thing, even before anime, Japanese film, there's a lot of good stuff there. I've been at it for a long time. It makes sense that I've really kind of latched onto this idea, this aspect of it as well in Steins Gate. But, going back to the idea of different types of, relationships, be it, the childhood friendship between Mayuri and Okarin, right? Be it the potential love interest or love story that might be at the center of it all, between Maxe and Okarin. A thing I forgot to mention from the first episode is that in that final moment, as the elevator doors open and you see Maxe standing there and as she turns, the music choice, the musical note at that point, the stinger, I suppose, it's quite a romantic one, isn't it? I thought it's a great touch. But here, yeah, it's full on just mindfuck and mystery and all of that at play, right? Reflected in the score. And yeah, I'd say the score is, it's engaging. It's really quite fitting for a lot of these moments. It has this really floaty quality about it. But, let's kind of shift the focus to Okarin and how he's feeling at the moment. Something that's really rather unique to Okarin, to the point that he might be the only one that is actually experiencing this and is able to feel this, as far as he knows at this point, at least, right? Because his only gauge is his, close friends or his, I don't know, associates, his first circle characters, the supporting cast. All of them are just going about life as if it's normal. It is normal for them. But for Okarin, it's not quite normal. I mean, somehow he still manages to kind of function normally, even with that, that idea that, okay, he actually felt all those things happen. He experienced all those things in the first timeline that I get to see, right? The radio building and Dr. Nakabachi and, the landing on the rooftop, the screaming actually being from Okarin himself, who's also in agony. There's a metalupa that goes missing because Mayuri dropped it already, but she wrote her name on it. His objection with Dr. Nakabachi. Again, he has another objection here for Maxe, right? Dr. Nakabachi is another character that I didn't really kind of cover all that much in episode 1, right? Because he just kind of comes and goes. But yeah, he's someone who's clearly interested in time travel. So he'll probably show up again in some capacity, right? And, this is someone who's open to, I don't know, plagiarizing and stealing ideas from others. Let's see if, that idea, that aspect comes into play again, right? As far as divergent timelines are concerned. So, see, I'm listing all these things out because that's all the stuff that this Okarin already experienced and has gone through. Yet now he finds himself in a really tricky situation, to the point that he's beginning to feel like, okay, how can you explain any of this? He's actually doubting himself, right? Because that seems like the most logical conclusion, that no one else seems to remember any of this. So how the hell can I remember any of this, right? It's realistic from his perspective. But like I said, I thought he'd be a little bit more crazed or a little bit more paranoid about the whole thing. He's actually still able to function, right, normally. And then from time to time, especially as he finds him by himself, and, immediately kind of feels like that facade, that mask, and, the optics of it all, they just kind of melt. They just kind of fall away, right? And this is really clear to see as he's in his apartment, just doing a bit of research. It's at night, and again, just the tone of that, the mood of that, and the ambient music, right? And the cuts to the pot that has a bit of leftover corn, right? The stringy stuff. The rooftop, iconic rooftop. I've seen it in the opening of episode 1 now, and at night as well here. And just moments like that, quiet, almost mundane. But again, the things that he's looking up are not mundane. They're mind-blowing. But you see that once he's by himself, all of that all of that armor, I suppose, the persona, it's not at play anymore, right? So yes, sure, he has a blast doing it, and other people play along as well, people like Ferris and Raku as well. But yeah, you see that ultimately, it's beginning to feel like that it's more so of like a mask, right, to protect himself, I think. And I think, as the anime plays out, as the narrative plays out, and as I get really, really deep into it, I'll probably, have a better understanding, or I'll get a bit more on Okarin and why exactly Okarin feels much more comfortable and confident taking that approach, right? Even small moments from the last episode, right? In the first timeline, or in that timeline rather. Because again, calling it the first might not be accurate. I don't know for sure. But in that divergent timeline that I get to experience in half of episode 1 at least, you see Maxe takes a phone from him, and it's a quick moment, but he's really rather flustered as she follows up by saying, "Oh, you're not even talking to anyone." You see a look on his face. He's just really, I don't know. He almost panics. Flustered. Yeah, flustered is the right term to use there, and immediately kind of locks in once again to that persona of his. So that's my read on him at this point, 2 episodes in. Yes, there's a fun element to it, but it appears that, the real Okarin is behind all of that, the optics and the masks and the personas and all of it. But, a little bit earlier on, I spoke of the relationship that he does have with Mayuri, right? This is someone he really cares for quite a bit. I think it's clear to see that in these 2 episodes. There'll be subtle moments of him, again, not being that goofy, Okarin, Hohin, Kiyoma persona and all of that. You see, he'll just kind of drop all of that, and he'll just kind of look at Mayuri, right? In these moments, simple moments. And, in this episode, there's really quite definitive moments as well, as both of them come across the closed off bridge, I suppose, or the path to the backside of the radio building. That scene, it's really rather, clear that it's a significant moment as well, the presentation of it, or at least that it is meant to be something that the audience, should be picking up on and should be, intrigued by at the least. And I am intrigued by it for sure, right from the beginning of that, right? The moment he kind of notices Mayuri pulling out the watch, the pocket watch, even that, as it lingers on that moment, her and the watch, and then again, you've got the hourglasses featured a little bit later on as well. This idea of time slipping by, and against the clock, or time is always ticking along, right? A race against time, and all of those things. But yeah, I don't know, something. My immediate feeling, I don't know, just immediately as you saw, I kind of felt a little bit uneasy. I thought it's interesting, but something about that moment, right before it, it's really wholesome and just, really fun. But then, as that moment lingers, and then, as the handoff happens, the bags, the bags full of corn, and again, you see they kind of touch fingers. And again, I'm not alluding to anything romantic, but, that shot just kind of lingers. And as the handoff happens, you see the quick, flash of that land, the orangey, land. And, I guess it really could be perhaps a depiction of the future, maybe. Maybe, that could be alluding to or foreshadowing a place, a specific place that might be, I don't know, the location for something important that goes down or happens to these characters, right? And yeah, that flash, like I said, is present. Not just that flash, that exact frame, You know, again, it's orangey, almost kind of looks like Mars. I'm not saying it is Mars, but, you know, you get the point. I'm guessing it is meant to be, you know, that dystopian future from, you know, 2036 and beyond, I suppose, from the time John Titor comes from, perhaps. Maybe it is, you know, a quick flash of that. Because, yeah, you know, it's just nothing. It's just land, barren land, essentially. And yeah, that's featured in the opening scene of episode 1. And, you know, who are the two characters that are prominently featured in the opening scene? It is Okarin and Mayuri, right? So, you know, these two are going to be really rather integral, or that relationship is going to be integral, I believe. I mean, I think that much is clear from that opening and the rest of the episode as well. Episode 1, that is. And, you know, another thing, as I am on the topic of the opening scene of the entire story, of the entire anime, it begins with static, right? Static. And then again, you know, it follows up with Okarin's monologue, and again, you know, the visual imagery of the power lines. And now, you know, now that I've got enough information here, enough exposition here, yeah, I think, you know, that is a depiction of those divergent timelines through the power lines. And I think it's a really effective, you know, visual depiction of it. Right. But, you know, even then you've got these lines, again, you know, the divergence or the divergent timelines. From time to time, you see, you know, through the poles, they kind of meet up again. Right. So if you kind of look into that and you kind of build on that idea, okay, so if there's divergent timelines, is there also the possibility and the notion of convergence happening as well at some point? Even though, you know, the idea of just infinite amounts of divergent timelines, and, you know, the many worlds interpretation being officially confirmed and established here through John Titor, is there also that idea of, you know, fixed moments in time, you know, a fixed event in time? And, you know, before I move on, the reason I bring up the static being the opening shot, the opening frame of the entire story, is because of another moment in episode 1 that is really, you know, rather, I don't know, mysterious and baffling, is the static on his phone after he gets that message, right? And, you know, I'll take a deep dive into that once again, you know, because I think if you look at the letters and all of that, I think I had the first one figured out. But yeah, I think I have some of the other ones figured out as well. I think, at least. But yeah, static. And it holds. The screen just holds. It's a tight shot of the static. Yeah. You know, that's clearly an integral component of all of this as well. But again, I'll come back to that. Let's kind of focus on the divergent timelines now. So, you know, Okarin maintains his memories, his consciousness, all of that. It's intact. So ultimately, I think at this point, it's becoming clear that he essentially takes over the Okarin that already existed in that timeline, right? So, you know, from Mayuri's perspective or Daru's perspective, you know, yeah, Okarin might seem a little bit off, thinking about these moments and, you know, saying things like, oh, Dr. Nakabachi's lecture, right? I was there and Mayuri was there. And you see in quite a serious moment as he drops all of that facade and, you know, persona and all of that stuff, he asked Mayuri, you really didn't hear that scream at the radio building this morning? Because you see now he's trying to get a definitive answer or confirmation on that, right? Mayuri has no reason to lie to him. Childhood friends and all of that, right? I think they have a really beautiful relationship. And yeah, she straight up tells him, no. I mean, of course not. You know, if you look at it from Mayuri's perspective, she didn't even go into the radio building because of the cancellation and all of that. But again, this Okarin has seen some shit, right? Already. So yeah, you know, now he knows, okay, Mayuri's not lying to me. She has no reason to lie to me. So it's something else, right? At that point, he knows it's got to be something else. But again, you know, bringing that scene in and using some of the information I have in this episode as well, you know, confirmation rather. Yeah, you see that indeed another Okarin is in that divergent timeline, right? And ultimately, most likely he's there to save Maxe, right? From getting stabbed and all of that. And again, I think it's pretty clear that is meant to be him screaming, right? You know, I've listened to it a few more times. That's definitely the same voice actor. It's him. It's Okarin. It simply is. So based on that, there's essentially two Okarins at play at the same time in that building, right? Though you see that there's a clear effort made there that this Ocarine doesn't see the other Ocarine, right? And this kind of, goes into something John Teeter said in the message board, right? Sure, you can meet yourself, you can run into yourself, but you're just going to end up creating a divergent timeline, a world line. But again, the screaming itself is still kind of perplexing because it is Ocarine screaming, that much is for sure, but he's also screaming in agony, right? Yet the body that our Ocarine came across is of Maxe bleeding out, right? So there's just something that happened there that I don't know yet. So of course, something else is happening to that other Ocarine as well. Maybe the person who ends up stabbing Maxe also kind of had a go at Ocarine, right? And that's him screaming in agony. But then he kind of got out of there, I suppose, before this Ocarine can come and see it. But again, like I said, there's always a possibility that, it's not staging a death, but, maybe this is something that this Ocarine simply had to see. Like I said, you have Maxe in episode 1 in the radio building, really making definitive statements. Like 15 minutes ago, she said it twice. And, I said during the reaction, it almost kind of feels like a directive, making sure to give this Ocarine the details of this, right? So once it's maybe his time to, go through on that path, he knows, he has these details. But listen, this is time travel, and I brought up different types of paradoxes. One of them that really truly could be at play there is a predestination paradox. And, I think the idea here, the setup here, actually kind of lends itself to that type of paradox. So there's a definitive thing that ends up happening there. Maxe gets stabbed and she dies, apparently, right? As far as I know, right? That's a thing that happened. And then, you've got Maxe earlier telling, this Ocarine, that, oh, you tried to tell me something 15 minutes ago, right? You looked rather distressed and all of that. So now you have a really clear situation, okay? Maxe dies, and the point is for Ocarine to go stop that from happening. And now, predestination paradox can slide in rather perfectly, right? The idea of it, the concept of it. Because to put it simply, predestination paradox, a lot of times it's, people thinking that they can go back in time to a really specific point in time and stop something from happening, right? But ultimately, they end up being one of the main reasons it ends up happening in the first place. That is a distinct possibility as well here, alongside, a couple of other possibilities. Hell, that in trying to stop Maxe from dying or getting stabbed, he might have caused it in the first place. Predestination paradox could be at play. And then, of course, that can kind of create this type of cycle. Maybe Ocarine tries over and over again to, prevent that from happening, but it's just futile, right? That kind of thing could be at play as well. I'm really rather excited about the different types of time travel mechanics already at play, and that you saw in episode 1. I was really quite excited about that prospect. But yeah, it's already clear that there's jumps going on essentially, right? Ocarine is jumping to different divergent timelines, right? And listen, before I forget, let's go back to the messages from the conclusion of episode 1, right? The outbox as he's going through it. He's really quite manic at that moment. One of them that really kind of stood out, there's some fun setup for the characters to come, and I get to meet them in the second episode, be it Raku and Ferris. But Mayuri, one of those messages, I don't know, man. Those messages, or at the time he is looking at those messages, he's already in a divergent timeline, in the one that this satellite, I'm doing air quotes, satellite crashed into the side rather than just landing on top of the roof, right? And yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I mean, that was one of the talking points, right? Okay, if it's crashed, what about the people inside? Are they just going to remain inside, or are they going to make a run for it or get out of there, right? Of course, people are going to go check it out, authorities and all of that. But if that is the case, and if that is a time machine, then yeah, I mean, they just kind of discovered something quite incredible, right? Huh. Maybe it's an ongoing thing still. And, maybe someone significant might actually end up getting to before. I mean, surely, the authorities have been inside or actually looked inside by now. But again, the main discussion point being the people or the person that was inside, how exactly did they react to it? And, the next episode, look at this. You've got two new characters. Though, again, in terms of the rooftop person, I'm leaning towards Amane Suzaha. But, John Teeter possibly being one of the two, I'm leaning towards the lady with the glasses or the girl with the glasses. Again, looking for the IBN 5100. But listen, the thing is, now that CERN has been established and, again, how exactly they go about things and, this dystopian future and the monopoly over time travel and all of that, this idea, this, kooky idea that he's always going on about, the organization, listen, there's literally an organization established now, right? So they might have their own people around as well, It's a possibility. You kind of have to look at all possibilities here. This could kind of be ground zero or, a significant moment for the creation of time travel. And perhaps for that reason, you've got multiple characters that could be time travelers showing up in the next episode, showing up at this point in time. That was one of my concerns. I'm suspicious. I'm definitely more suspicious of the girl with the glasses in comparison to Amane Suzaha. But again, man, that could be a misdirect as well. I mean, even though Suzaha does look like the person from the rooftop, at least her, body shape and the hairstyle as well, at least the top part of it. Listen, it could turn out maybe that this is someone from CERN. It's possible. Again, keeping close tabs on the lab and, Ocarine and all that stuff, right? I think that much, I think all of us can agree that, that's rather suspicious. This new character shows up and again, telltale signs that, they don't know trends and how people say hello and, corn, actual corn, unprocessed corn and all of that. It's in our faces, essentially, at this point, that they end up this close, in close proximity to Ocarine. Right, and the lab itself specifically as well. But yeah, I don't know. Sure, they could bamboozle me, but I'm a bit more suspicious of the girl with the glasses, right? And you saw my reaction the moment he put his thing down there, the password he likes to say and gets others to say as well, right? If they'll partake at least, people like Ferris and Raku certainly enjoy that aspect of it. El Sai Kongaru. He put that in the message, right? So I don't know, something about that made me a little bit uneasy that, this person has so much information, right? Contact information, his code name that he also used in the message board. And again, El Sai Kongaru. But see, as I am on the topic of El Sai Kongaru, let me kind of, quickly jump to the email he got or the message he got, and then again it quickly goes to static, right? I'm going to just focus on that immediately, because there's a good chance that El Sai Kongaru is actually a part of that email address, right? But there's a bit of a catch, I suppose. But let's look at it again after episode 2. I've got it in front of me, right? So SG, I felt that's really quite clear that clearly stands for Steins Gate. But the next bit, now it gets really interesting. EPK. The first two letters, EP. I mean, El Sai. It's got to be, right? And, the moment I read SG, I believe I said, yeah, I think this might be from Ocarine himself, Steins Gate and all of that, right? But that's his thing. Steins Gate is his thing, his term. But again, that's at this point in time or at that point in time, right? It could become a big thing, a big, I don't know, thing. It could become a thing that others know about and others learn about, others he tells about essentially at some point in time, perhaps. But yeah, EPK, El Sai, K is the one that kind of sticks out, right? If it's EPC, then you've got El Sai Kongaru. But, Kongaru, that could be a K. You could spell it with a K. Is that a possibility here? That EPK actually does stand for El Sai Kongaru. Instead of C, a K, right? And then you've got at JT, John Teeter, right? This if you look at it in front of you, it really kind of checks out, right? And K, I'm not too sure about K. But yeah, I think, I'm confident that JT does stand for John Titor. The K, Kongaru, John Titor, Kongaru. But again, that's assuming that, they're doing this, clever thing about, okay, the C changes to a K and you've got Kongaru, the same thing. Kongaru sounds like kangaroo, right? And kangaroo is spelt with a K. So yeah, EPK could be outside Kongaru, right? But yeah, John Titor, K. John Titor, K. K. I mean, let's skip that for now and go to 93. Usually, if you've got numbers, that's usually the year you're born, right? It's just a common thing that everyone's done for a long ass time at this point. So if it is meant to be someone that was born in 93 and now it's 2010, that makes them 17 years old. See, if that actually ended up being 92, that could have been 18 years old, and I got a really specific date, someone's actual age spoken out loud in this episode, and that is our new character, Amane Suzaha, right? Who claims to be 18. So if that ended up being 18, right, or John or JTK 92, then I could have linked that to that character. There could have been a link to that character. Suzaha. But in this case, it's saying 93, so it's being sent by someone who might be 17 years old. I mean, I don't have an age for Okarin, right? I know he's much older. He seems to be a bit older at least than characters like Mayuri and Ferris, but he's the same age as Daru. Is he 17? No, he can't be 17, right? He's in college. He's not a high schooler. Maybe it's not Okarin sending it to himself. That's a possibility. So Steins Gate, SG, EPK, possibly outside Kongaru, JTK, K, K. Yeah, that's the one that's kind of tripping me up a bit. There's a K, Kiyoma. Yeah. Hohin Kiyoma. That's a possibility. There is a K, okay. But again, I'm not too sure anymore that this is actually Okarin sending that mail or that email or that attachment. But that also becomes the next question about the static. Is that the attachment being opened up and not functioning, or I don't know, opening as it should? Or is it just his phone acting up after receiving that message specifically? But if it is the attachment that's being, opened up there, but not actually being anything but static, that raises another question. Why exactly is static being sent to Okarin's phone? But that's only assuming that is, the attachment. There's other possibilities that his phone is not able to play the attachment and all he's seeing is static. I really studied that frame as, the camera just kind of lingers on it. It's static. There's nothing else in there. There's nothing hidden in there. I looked again, it's static. So if indeed that's the attachment that is not playing properly, and it's just static, there's a possibility that certain requirements or conditions have not been met for that to actually open normally on that phone at that point in time, at least, specifically, right? Or again, it could be a case of just his phone not being able to, I don't know, handle the attachment, and it just ends up being all static. I don't know. This idea of decoding a message, or certain requirements being needed to decode the message, that feels a bit more likely. But going back to the idea of another Okarin being present in episode 1, in that timeline at least, this idea of jumping to a different timeline, divergent timeline. If that is the case, what exactly are the rules of it, the connotations of it? How exactly do you pull that off? I brought up a little bit earlier, this idea of time running out, or, against the clock and all of that. You've got the hourglass, you've got Mayuri looking at her pocket watch. I don't know, is there like a time limit on it? How long you can actually jump to a different or divergent timeline? And try to change things and all of that. Listen, ultimately in this present timeline, Maxe is alive, so the sending of that message led to, I suppose, a bunch of things that ultimately led to this change, right? I mean, ultimately, it doesn't have to be a massive thing, this idea of the butterfly effect. I mean, even seemingly insignificant decisions or moments could cascade into massive repercussions. I mean, I'm already seeing changes, or, both Ocarina and I get to see them together, essentially, in this timeline that OG Ocarina from episode 1 finds himself in, right? Because he retains his memories and he appears to be the only one who can do this, at least at this point in time, as far as I know, right? And that's got to be such an isolating feeling. But that being said, who else is out there at this point in time who actually understands the things that Ocarina might be going through, right? There could be characters at play that actually understand that. Again, the two possible time travelers in Glasses Girl and Suzaha, right? They could know exactly how Ocarina is feeling at the moment. But yeah, I think it's a really unique approach to it all, right? That Ocarina is able to maintain his memories, or his memories are intact, his consciousness is intact from that timeline, so he actually gets to see the divergent, or he gets to experience the divergent timelines, or experience the changes rather, right? And he's experiencing them because from his perspective, John Teeter has always been a thing, right? A hoax, an actual hoax in real life, and the details of it, the years and all of that. But here in this timeline, it's happening for the first time, or this is how the John Teeter aspect of it is playing out. And of course, to Ocarina's shock, those books don't exist. Daru doesn't know who the hell John Teeter is. So it's happening here for the first time in this timeline. This is how the John Teeter story is playing out for him as well, right? In real time in the story. And of course, there's some changes even within the John Teeter narrative, or the things that he claims, right? So in this one, he has not traveled to 2000, right? Or at least he's claiming that. No, I mean, sure, it's an interesting thing to ask about, but no, I really haven't been to 2000, to the year 2000. But if you look at some of the other claims of the actual John Teeter hoax, again, claims to be a traveler from 2036. That checks out in this one as well. Again, it comes from a dystopian future, a time of war, famine, destruction. Again, the tech is developed at CERN. I mean, here he didn't say that. He didn't specify that. He did specify that they monopolize it, but he didn't say it was developed by CERN, right? Because again, I think I am in the middle of time travel becoming a thing, even though earlier he gets absolutely just defeated, right? By Maxe in their lecture, right? I love that scene, the back and forth. But again, divergent timelines, infinite possibilities. In one, maybe it wasn't possible, but in another, certain breakthroughs didn't happen or did happen, and time travel does become possible. But like I said a little bit earlier, this whole phone microwave thing, and the bananas, the gelnanas, all of that stuff. Yeah, big things have small beginnings. This could be the beginning of it all right here in that apartment above Dr. Brown's CRT shop, right? And, of course, time travel and, wormholes and dark holes, black holes are just constants, right? They kind of go hand in hand. So is there also a possibility of something like that being at play? Just the setup of the phone microwave actually, I don't know, putting something into motion, creating something so it allows for something like that, a bit of, immediately, even I thought it could be teleporting, but it appears that it probably is time travel, and it has returned to the bunch, but in the Jalnana state. How about that, right? So yeah, in episode 1, he does use the term curved black holes and, world lines, and that really got me excited because those are terms kind of attached to John Teeter as well. And then of course, there's CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. I mean, ultimately, the things that, Daru and Ocarina have been messing around with, yeah, it ultimately allowed or facilitated this to happen, right? They're able to create a really unique thing, right? A really unique discharge that allowed for this. So yeah, let's see how dark holes and wormholes come into the narrative. But also going back to John Teeter, the real John Teeter claims the hoax and all of that. He also had close ties to this mission of his, right? Because his grandfather was, I think, a lead engineer of the small team, responsible for building the IBM 5100. Right. So, it's another idea I brought up in episode 1, this idea of familial connections being at play, but, not everyone's going to know about it, or no one's going to know about it until, again, maybe it's big, reveal moment. Right. So if our John Teeter is at play, and again, if it's not just a completely different character, it could be the Glasses Girl, or it could be Mane Suzaha, is this a relative as well? Maybe their parents could be around, listen, is this, okay, this one might be a bit too soon, but is it possible that, this could be, I don't know, Okurin's daughter? Okurin and Maxe, I'm just going to go ahead and assume, it could be a thing, but even if that's not the case here, there could be other relationships at play. I mean, you could also look at the other possibility, the girl with the glasses, right? Is she related to someone? Is she maybe Okurin's daughter? I don't know. It could be an interesting approach, having, the exact opposite, essentially, in terms of, personality and disposition to Okurin's. Right? Really quite guarded. The girl with the glasses, that is introvert. But again, just because, 2 episodes in, this is the disposition I've seen of Okurin at this point, almost kind of like a fake it till you make it, embody the person that you want to be, maybe. And, again, you see in his apartment, he drops all of that. He does. And he's almost really, certainly not that Okurin anymore. As he's kind of contemplating, okay, did I just hallucinate all of that? Really, really quite level-headed at that point. And also, even though he loves this whole, mad scientist, Hohin Kiyoma persona of his, you see that he's a competent student, a competent scientist even already. I mean, there's that scene of him taking the train to the university, right? I mean, the presentation is odd, or at least it stands out quite a bit than anything else, almost as if that might be, Okurin, just being himself, right? He's not really being performative at all for anyone at that point, and that's just him being himself, and that's kind of reflected in the tone, or again the visual representation of it, or depiction of it rather. But yeah, I think it's clear to see that, of course, Okurin has a thoughtful side. Like I said, he cares quite a bit about Mayuri. He certainly cares about Daru as well. He didn't want to sell him out. And I think ultimately you can tell why exactly characters like Raku and, Ferris kind of take to him as well, I'm not even saying in a romantic aspect, even though, of course, Raku appears to have a crush on him. And he also kind of has an interest in Raku as well, but he's a dude. Right? According to Okurin, that's a bit of speed bump for him at least. But yeah, I think ultimately there is a kind and caring individual there behind all of this persona stuff of his. But yeah, I think that brings me back to the conclusion. Maxe is now at the lab. So, this should be interesting, the banter and how she'll actually, take part in all of this and try to understand and try to, have a discussion essentially. But yeah, she got to the lab. In the first episode, he is giving really specific instructions to the lab, but I'm not sure if that's actually going out to anything, on the internet. I suppose I'll find out soon enough, how exactly she got the address, and even already kind of knows about the experiments that are going on here. Unless, again, it's as simple as her standing there the whole time in the corner and actually seeing it play out. But no, she didn't seem that shocked, because actually she's rather calm, right? You're conducting some intriguing experiments in here. Okabe Rintaru, right? Said the full name at first, then again, the code name, to tease him again a little bit. But yeah, let's put a pin in that and get back to it in episode 3. And, ultimately, I think, the discussion portion or the analysis portion for this anime, for this story, it's just going to be this constant that just kind of continues into the next, and it'll just be like this big thing. Again, a continuing discussion as I get new information, and, ultimately going back to prior episodes. I can see myself going all the way back to episode 1 quite a bit. as I get through each episode, and have a bit more to the big picture, right? Add a bit more to the big picture. But yeah, if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page and possibly supporting the channel as well in the process of it all. The links are in the description and the pinned comment, also links to social media. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.